we need to start talking about our rifle scopes. So when we're selecting a rifle scope, there's a bunch of different features and details that we need to consider. I think one of the most important things to consider is whether or not we want to go with an MOA or a mil scope. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that I strongly recommend going with a Millradian scope. And the reason for that is because there is a quick drop number that you can use, and it makes coming up with a D.O.P.E chart or a formula extremely easy and very streamlined. I've already got some videos posted. I think it's called the quick D.O.P.E chart. You can check those out. That give you a pretty detailed explanation. There's like six different videos. I will get into that a little bit further in this series, but first I think it's important to understand what a minute of angle is and what a Millradian is. So let's start out with minute of angle. So minute of angle is 1/60th of 1 degree. So one way to memorize that is think about a clock. Think about time. 1 minute, there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, so it's 1/60th. So if we have our super perfect circle here, and we know that there's 360 degrees in a circle. So if we take, let's say, one of those degrees, now obviously this isn't going to be the size, but let's just say that that is 1 degree. If we take that 1 degree and we divide it into 60 even parts, we're going to take one of those parts, and that is going to be 1 minute of angle. So it's 1/60th of a degree. Now, the good thing about this for us is, and you hear people talk about this all the time, is a minute of angle being 1 inch at 100 yards. Well, that's not quite true. 1 minute of angle at 100 yards equals 1.047. 1 MOA at 100 yards equals 1.047 inches. So that is 1 minute of angle. So at 200 yards, it's going to be 1.047 times 2, so I think that's 1.094. I'm sorry, 2.094. Now, most people are going to refer to minute of angle as 1 inch at 100 yards, 2 inches at 200 yards, because on our scopes, we can't dial for that 0.47. So we'll refer to it as that 1 inch at 100 yards, even though we know it's 1.047 inches. Technically, 1 inch at 100 yards, 2 inches at 200 yards is referred to as SMOA, shooter minute of angle. But it's commonly referred to back and forth. They just refer to it as minute of angle. But I think it's important to know that it is 1.047 inches at 100 yards. Okay, so we got a basic understanding of minute of angle, but just like minute of angle being an angular measurement, Millradian is also an angular measurement. It's just brought about a different way. So let's look at what a Millradian is. So if we take from the center of our circle to the edge, that distance, let's say A to B, we're going to take that and wrap it around the edge of our circle. We'll just say that's what it is. And that angle right here, that is referred to as a radian. Now, if we take that radian and we divide it into 1,000 equal parts, just like we did with our minute of angle, but instead of 1 degree, we've got 1 radian, that is going to equal 1 Millradian. So 1 Millradian, or mil, equals 1/1000th. So 1 Millradian at, let's say, at 100 yards. So 1 mil equals 3.6 inches at 100 yards. If we want to assign it an inch. Just like minute of angle, it equals 1.047 inches if we want to assign it an inch. But both of these Millradians, minute of angle, What they are not is inches. They are not centimeters. They are not feet, yards, anything like that. They are an angular measurement. So what this equals at 100 yards isn't necessarily all that important. We need to stop thinking in inches, centimeters, and start thinking in either mils or MOA. So you're going to hear a lot of people talk about when they'll tell you, hey, if you want to decide if you want to go with minute of angle or Millradian, they're going to tell you if you think in inches, go with MOA. If you think in centimeters, then go with mils. And that is just not the case, because it doesn't equal an even inch. It doesn't equal, that exactly. So 1 mil can equal, because it's 1/1000th, we can break that down into tenths. But when it comes to mils, 1 inch at 1,000 inches is 1 milliradian, or 1 mil. 1 yard at 1,000 yards is 1 mil. 1 car at 1,000 cars is 1 mil. So you can still just as easy use inches with mils. So I do that all the time. I have all my scopes are Millradian, and I have a formula that I use, which I'll get into, but basically we can use our constant of 27.77, and that's going to revert our inches in our formula into yards using mils. So it's very easy to do when we start milling our targets. I'll get into that into the future, but again, it's not inches. It's not a certain distance. It's an angular measurement. So when people say that, when they tell you, well, if you think in inches, go with MOA, it just kind of irks me, because it's not the case. Again, I'm going to recommend going with Millradian scopes over MOA, but it's your personal choice. You have to just decide. Again, look at the reticle, get a basic understanding of the reticle, and kind of decide off of that. All right, so another thing to know about minute of angle and Millradian is that so most of our MOA scopes are going to have a quarter adjustment. So meaning at 100 yards, it's going to be 0.25 inches, like 1 click of the scope or 1/4 minute. A Millradian is going to be 0.36. So quarter MOA and 1/10 mil. That's a 4. So if you want the finer adjustment, then you may want to go with MOA, because technically it's a little bit finer of an adjustment, where mil is a little bit coarser of adjustment. But again, at extreme, you can't even, the difference between these two numbers, you can't even dial into your scope. Even at 1,000 yards, you can't dial that into your scope, because it's such a small adjustment. So I do like you to be aware of that, but for me, it's not really a deciding factor, because it's such a small increment that we can't even really necessarily do anything about. So when I said that we need to start thinking in minutes of angle or Millradian, and that not to be converting it to inches and trying to determine how many inches whatever is, and that part didn't matter, let me explain. So in this situation, we're going to have an unknown distance and an unknown target size. So let's say we look out at our target, we're going to estimate it somewhere pretty close to about 500 yards. We're going to dial in our dope for 500 yards, and let's say that we want to hit center of target, but we hit this X here. So because we don't know our size, we don't know the distance really, then we don't know how many inches we have to dial up. But because our reticle is a ruler, it tells us exactly what to do. It doesn't tell us to come up, 15 inches, or to come up, 7 minutes of angle or whatever it is. But what it does tell us is that because we're 2 mils low and 1 mil to the right, that we need to dial up 2 mils. So we need to come up 2 mils, and that'll bring us up to our line here. And then we need to come left 1 mil. And at that point in time, hopefully everything being equal, we will have a perfect impact right in the center. So we don't have to know how many inches it is. We don't have to know how many centimeters low it is. We don't need to know any of that. None of that's important because our reticle is telling us exactly what to dial. So I know that I'm 2 minutes low and 1 minute right, or this isn't an MOA scope, I'm 2 mils low and 1 minute right. So we don't need to know what that equals in inches, and that's why we need to not think in inches. We need to think in mils or MOA. So that is how we take care of those shots. Let me give another quick explanation of how we can use mils with inches. Now, about the only time I really refer to anything in inches is going to be target size. So I always try to know the size of my target. Let's say in this example, we've got a 10-inch target, and we are going to use our reticle. This is a terrible drawing, by the way, but we're going to use our reticle to measure our target because we know the size of our target to get our distance. So in this situation, let's say that our target is half a mil wide, so 0.5. What we're going to do is we're going to line up the edge of our target with the edge of our crosshair, and we measure 0.5 mils. So what we can do is we take the size of our target, which is 10 inches, and we take our constant. Our constant to get inches using the mil formula and get yards as our answer is 27.77. And we're going to divide that by the size of our target and our reticle. So it's 0.5. So 10 times 27.77 divided by 5 mils gives us a distance of 555 yards. And I'm just going to give you a quick reason of why I like mils. If I have a target at 555 yards, I'm just going to go ahead and round that up to 5.6 or 560. So we're going to take 1/100th of that. So we're going to have 5.6. And for my caliber, my quick chart number or my quick dope number is 2.2. So we're going to subtract 2.2 from this number. $3.4. Now I can do that math in my head, but I can mill my target. I do need a calculator for that, but without really having any ballistic calculator or anything, because I've done this ahead of time, but I know at 560 yards, I need to come up 3.4 mils to make that shot. And that is kind of the general reason why I was always going to recommend mils over MOA. But this is how we use our reticle, and this is about the only time that I'm using inches as any kind of reference. But we can still use mils and reference inches and get yards. So it doesn't really matter which one you pick as far as thinking, like what people say, if you think in inches, go with minute of angle, and if you think in centimeters or meters, to go with Millradian. So it doesn't really work that way. So I think that pretty much wraps this one up. So thank you guys for joining in, and stay tuned for the next video.